Yeah, there we go. We're not blinking anymore.
Still coming up? No? Yes?
Yeah, we should be on now. Yeah, let me go ahead and kick the camera over to you. There we go.
So we're... What
You're
was
on.
it, do you think? What was the deal?
Well, it seems to be the cable has to be reset, or I need a new cable, new Ethernet cable again.
Okay.
Always something.
Seems like.
Always something. There you go. We got one viewer. We got one viewer with one like. That's perfect. Remember the good old days when we had that? We had, what, 8 people?
Yeah.
Oh, those were the days, man. Quality programming. We were excited to get 8. Then we got double digit. We were unstoppable.
So you think we're on now?
It says we are, so I believe it.
Oh, okay. So hi, anybody that's watching. Hi, this is Storytime with Ginger. I'm just, there's so much detail on this little car that what I'm doing is trying to get that pretty much perfected. And I'm using these Artisto pens because look at all the pens I've got. Isn't that great? All these different colored pens. So I'm just looking, I like this deep green one. Let's see. We'll see what happens. You know, I could use a brush, but this, I've got absorbent ground on here, so it's a little harder for me to,
You got to get a
just
first
a little
coat
bit
on.
harder for me to get the detail on a car like this because the background is absorbent ground. And so I want to make sure that I've got this. So it's all right, no worries. Let's see, I've got a few, you have to really shake them, but what I like about these Artisto pedals than the Poscas, and I've been such a big Posca fan, is that once you get them started, they're pretty good. They don't need to be shaken up a lot to work. That's been, at least been my experience. And the trick is you just have to push down and just let the ink, you know, fill into the felt pen, you know. We used to be, you just kept pushing them like that, pump, 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 and then you'd, you know, dull the tip. So you just got to be a little patient and push that down. See, that in itself is sort of interesting, isn't it? So yeah, I think so. Anyway, there's a lot of detail in this picture. And because there's a car in it, I thought I'd share the stories that I had today about my time selling cars. Because some years ago in the 80s, I was one of the first female car salesmen in the United States, or at least in San Diego. I was what they called an anomaly. It's a good word, isn't it? And when I first, the genesis of how that came to pass, you know, how on earth did I end up selling cars in San Diego, California? You know, how on earth did that even happen? You know, even to this day, it confuses me a little how that happened. I'm not even sure how it happened. But it turned out that Cinnamon's dad and I lived off investments from our trust fund. And the investments one year went belly up and we had absolutely no income coming in. Our house was paid for, but I felt that somebody needed to go find some employment. And Cinnamon's dad was very resistant. He basically said the comment, he'd rather live in a tent on the side of a hill than get a job. And I'm thinking, well, you know, there's a lot of things I put up with in a marriage, but it felt a little bit like I was trying to paddle a boat and he was poking holes in it with an ice pick. You know, that's how it felt to me. And so I said, well, you know what? You know, that's certainly your decision, but I'm certainly going to get a job. And he said to me, who would possibly hire you? You can't get a job as an artist to pay anything, and your only real skill is talking on the phone. And I said, well, that's a skill, my friend, and I will turn it into something. So the first job I got was, before things had gotten too terrible, was a job making sandals. at a sandal company down in Carlsbad, or no, I guess it was Solana Beach, Encinitas, Solana Beach, Cardiff by the Sea, that's where it was, Cardiff by the Sea. There was a guy and he had like 5 of his employees and we literally were making sandals by hand. And so I was doing that and I wasn't very good at it, but he hired me and it was just like practically minimum wage, and Colby thought it was a total waste of time. He couldn't believe I would even consider doing something like that, but I did. And so I'd bring the sandals home, and rather than him help me with them, because I'd bring some home to try to finish them at work, he made a little device to make it easier for me to do them, but he never helped. That was his big help, was making a little device to help me do them, okay? So I could see the handwriting on the wall, and I want you to know that all my friends went out and bought sandals from this guy, tried to be supportive. It was really cute, okay? And it was kind of a stupid job in the sense that it wasn't going to pay anything, really. But, you know, I got my feet wet, so to speak, no pun intended. So then I decided that what I really needed to do was get a sales job of some kind, because that does well. And I decided I would sell cars. So the first place I came to, you know, I was looking in the papers and I decided there were a lot of car dealers in those days right up by where we lived, up in, not very far away, in a place called Carlsbad. There were a lot of car dealerships. So I decided that maybe what I would do there was go apply for a job. So when I went to apply for a job, I went to Carlsbad Mitsubishi, and I went to apply for a job there. I need a little place to put these that are right happy for me, right? A little, you know, I just need a little somewhere to put stuff. Need a little jar just for my pens that I'm currently using, John. It's just something I can have right handle. So anyhow, so I went in and applied for a job. I think I saw an ad in the paper. That's what I did. Car salesman wanted. So in those days, I know this sounds funny when you talk about those days in the early, mid-80s, 1980s, there weren't any women, there were very few women car salesmen. Very few. And so when I went to apply for a job, the guy asked me, he said, you know, he asked me what experience I had with cars, and I said, absolutely none. You know, we owned a car, I guess, but, you know, we'd keep a car forever. You know, we weren't car people at all. Even when we had money in my trust fund, we were not car people. I think we had a car that was like a $1,600 first Honda that came out, and that's what we used. I mean, that's the car we had, right? So since we did, you know, we really, honestly, I had no experience with cars, but, you know, that didn't deter me. I don't want you to think that it did, because it certainly didn't deter me at all, because, you know, basically what I said to him was, well, I don't know why you should hire me, except that for this reason. I know I'm going to sell a lot of cars for somebody. And it's either going to be for you or somebody else. So really, it's just up to you. I will be selling cars for somebody. That's what I told him, okay? And he was so taken aback by that comment that he said, I guess it's going to be for us. You're hired. And so then he proceeded to give me there was video machines and you know, like 8-track video machines, right? And I spent the first week just watching videos of the cars and what their features were and so forth, right? That was my first experience with that, was just seeing what that was, okay? And so, I mean, it was sort of interesting. I mean, it was interesting in the sense that I didn't know the first thing about cars, you know? But here's the thing. I knew about sales. You know, if you can go door to door and convince somebody that they ought to buy a watchtower car. I mean, something they might want was, man, I didn't see a problem with this at all. I figured this was a piece of cake. I mean, I don't know why everybody was so worried. I mean, it's like, for instance, it's just a car, you guys. Just everybody wants a car. Who doesn't want a new car, right? Who couldn't get behind that? But I didn't rely on just that in my experience. You know, going door to door some years before doing watchtowers for Jehovah's Witnesses. I went ahead, because by that time I was no longer a Jehovah's Witness. But at that time, I went ahead and started getting tapes on sales, like, you know, how to sell things. You know, I studied sales. Now, this is very important because a lot of people don't factor that in when they take up sales for anything. They don't factor in the fact that that every job has some skills associated to it, and it doesn't hurt to learn what those are. You just don't, you know. You know, Zig Ziglar was my favorite, and what I learned from Zig Ziglar specifically was that customer service was everything. The more you made the customer feel important, regardless of who they were, you made them feel important, the more important that was for you as a salesman, okay? So, I'm sitting here thinking about that. So, and the one story that Zig Ziglar used to tell, I used to listen to Zig Ziglar's stories on the way to work, okay? That was, you know, kind of my thing, was to listen to his stories. And this probably should dry that, but that kind of separates that a little bit and get this little car. So anyway, one of Zig's stories was that he talked about, this is one of my favorites, he talked about the time when during the Depression, that he worked as a child, as a young man, as a kid. He worked at a grocery store, and it was during the Depression, so a lot of times, just kind of like we all remember from COVID, the grocery stores would not have things. They'd be out, okay? And so it was Zig's job to run to the grocery store, clear across town at a dead run, possible, and if somebody needed a can of beans or something like that, well, he would go get it, okay? That's what he would do. He would go get it. And he told a story one day of how he was getting, just put a little shadow in here. He was, you know, on an errand to go get no, another kid. Here's how the story goes. It's coming back to me now. I have to think about it. So this kid came in the store from the other grocery store because it was reciprocal. The other grocery store had a kid who also was sent to their store to buy things when they were out of stuff. Yes and yes. And so anyway, when this young man left with a can of beans or something, what did he come to get? They were both about the same age, Zig Ziglar and this kid. And when the young man left, his boss looked wistfully at him, and he said, "That boy is going to get a raise." And Zig said, "How do you know that? You know, how do you know that?" And his boss says, "Because if his boss doesn't give him one, I will." Because that's how industrious this young man was about getting to their store and getting the stuff and back and so forth. So Zig said that was an important lesson for him, was the fact that customer service was everything. So anyway, that was just, you know, you take all these little things, people understand, you take all these little things to heart when you're learning something, and I certainly did that. I thought that was kind of neat that he he, that's a neat story. So anyway, I took those words of wisdom. I took those words of wisdom with me when I went to start selling cars. Now I've got to drive. And one of the cars that we had, this Honda, but we also had, I had a 1929 Model T replica that Colby had made for me. It was a kit. You bought it out of Florida, and you put it together using Volkswagen, but it really did look like a Model T. Okay. And anyway, it was beautiful. It was a beautiful car. And I'm telling you what, at 33 in that little car, I looked pretty spiffy. Driving around in that car, it felt really spiffy. And I remember driving up to the car dealership to get a job selling cars in that, which, people got a lot of attention just from the car. Now, in all fairness, Colby had put that car together with chewing gum and leftover haywire, because I mean it was dangerous, absolutely dangerous. I think about this Model T, it makes me think about that car, and it was so dangerous. Let's see, I'll just make sure I'm in the right place here with this color. It was so dangerous that he didn't really finish it, but he just kind of finished it, and the brakes were attached with bungee cords. I swear to God, John, it's true. Brakes were on there with bungee cords, and if anything had happened, if bungee cords had come loose, I wouldn't have been able to stop the car. Here I am driving around in this piece of plastic, because that's what it was, just a piece of plastic, absolutely, totally unsafe, and particularly the way he made it with, just unbelievable, right? And yeah, I mean, I'm telling you, it was unbelievable what he did with how he made this car. And let's see, how far up am I going with this? Up to this roof line here. So anyway, I've got this. In fact, I'll tell you, it's kind of a side story about that car. Besides bleaching out in the sun, and was kind of too bad, kind of bleaching out the plastic. It should have been kept garage. We didn't have one. I was driving home from, I know what it was. I was really, I didn't want the car anymore. I could see already that the car was a problem, and I really didn't want the car anymore in that sense. It just really, I don't know if the sense makes sense, but I didn't want the car. I really felt that, but we couldn't really sell it to anybody else, and it was weird because I was driving back from, I don't know, visiting friends or something, in a place called Rancho Santa Fe, which is a very expensive neighborhood, and probably the most expensive neighborhood in that area, on the way back to Olivenhain, and let's see, what else can I tape here? I got to dry this, and then you'll hear about how the car caught fire. That's a fun story. How the car caught fire. That's you just can't believe what it's like to be driving down the road and see flames coming out of the hood of your car. Whatever, or whatever. Anyway, I'll try. So, Oh yeah, so anyway, I'm driving down in Rancho Santa Fe, and I'm in a wooded area. Rancho Santa Fe was known for their eucalyptus trees. It was originally a eucalyptus tree ranch that that people built to. Let's see, this has to go like this. Okay. That people built to. People planted the eucalyptus trees for railroad ties originally before it became a big, rich, fancy housing development. And anyhow, I was driving along in kind of a secluded part of down this road. I can't remember the name of the road, but anyway, my car caught fire. And I stop and I get out of the car and I see the flames. And I was serious because it was insured, and I thought, you know where I'm going with this. I could just let this keep burning. What do you think? I could say that I'm a girl, I don't know anything about putting out fires, and it caught on fire, and what was a girl to do, right? And I thought, well, I could probably get away with that. I mean, I didn't set it on fire, obviously.
Obviously.
Right? So this wasn't my fault, yes? What is that? It's not my fault, So why couldn't that be okay? Okay? So, I mean, I was really giving this some serious thought. And then I realized that if those trees caught fire, which were like tinder, if those silly trees caught fire, I could be in big trouble. I'd probably be liable for the whole friggin' forest if it all burned down. You know how people get. That's just cute will take you so far, but probably not burning down all of Rancho Santa Fe wasn't gonna fly. Does that make sense? So I sat there and I found dirt, on the side of the road, and I just threw dirt all over the flames until I put it out. Then I had it towed home. That was my experience with that car. Then years later on that car, it came with me in the divorce, and George saw it, and he said, there's just bungee cords holding these brakes together. Did you know that? He says, looking accusing like, good Lord, even George goes, they're just bungee cords. Can you believe that? Bungee cords. What is wrong with that guy married bungee cords? So then we took the car to a mechanic up the road, another one of his strange people that used to work for him. And the guy worked on the car, and then later I gave it to Cinnamon and John, because Cinnamon's husband, I love him, but one of the things that he does, and I'll be real honest with you, he's a project person that never quite finishes projects. Yeah, I'm not saying that the rest of us don't do that too, but he's particularly good at not finishing things. He was going to keep fixing it up. He never did. It ended up leaving it, kind of covered outside in the backyard, and then they moved, didn't want the car, so when we sold the house, this little rental house that we owned, the car we told them they could have the car, but this time they could have it. And they were thrilled to have it, and they were a family when they bought the house. They were car people, kind of, in a weird kind of way, right? And I don't know if that's weird, but anyway, they fixed the car up and were happy to have it. So the car had a happy ending, but at that point it didn't have it. So in the meantime, yes, what is the meantime? Oh yeah, it's coming back to me, right, you guys? Okay, so that's that. This is this. This goes here. Okay, just trying to figure out where everything goes here. Well, as we're having these lovely conversations. So anyway, I had this job at the car dealership. Anyway, they hired me, but they didn't, there was only one other woman working there, and she kind of resented me coming in. I could tell that. And they had me on the floor a little bit, and I had done something that one of the managers didn't like, and he kind of wanted me gone. I'd made a mistake about something, just whatever I'd done. I've forgotten what it was, but he was just, you ever seen somebody hopping mad? He was what we would call hopping mad. And he just brought me in his office and was just screaming at me. I'm going to dry this and I'll tell you the story about how this man just screamed and screamed and screamed at me. I mean, called me names. I mean, just so inappropriate. You know, you don't do that. He couldn't get away with it now, but that in those days, there was no such thing as sexual harassment laws or any of that stuff, rules. So he got away with saying some pretty mean-spirited things to me. And I remember just looking at him going, "You're right, absolutely sorry. I'll do better. Just don't know how that happened. I'm so sorry." And let me just get this a little lower. Notice how I can recycle the tape if you use the good side, just saying. So, anyhow, he looked at me absolutely incredulously because he said, "All right, well, just so you know for the future, just don't do that anymore." And I later one of my friends that also worked there overheard him saying, "I couldn't believe it. She just sat there. I was screaming at her, and she didn't bat an eye. She just apologized. She never burst into tears or crying," which I thoroughly expect. He was waiting for me to do that, burst into tears and cry. And he couldn't believe it. And to me, that was so funny because Cinnamon's dad could just yell and scream and be so much, you know, I was married to a yeller and a screamer. I mean, you know, I'm sorry, friend, that was nothing, right? That was just a good day of somebody being unhappy, you know. It was really kind of fun, kind of sad and kind of funny, because he definitely wasn't making much of an impression on me. I got to tell you that right now, with his yelling and his screaming, because I mean, you know. And I kept on working there, and let's see, what do I got here? Okay. This is one of the Artisto pens. I just like these a little bit better. I think I don't want black, though. Anyhow, let's look for a brown. Okay, I'll just shake this up and work. So anyway, I continued on working at Mitsubishi, but there really was some concern about you know, what to do with me, even though I was selling a few cars. So it was decided that what they turned around, I didn't work there very long, and again, like I say, I didn't know that much about cars or car sales or any of that stuff, but I mean, I was getting along all right. And so they said, well, how would you like to work in the fleet department? And I didn't know what a fleet department was, but I've been one that I've always, now this sounds very shallow, and I apologize if it does, but I love titles. What's a fleet department? Well, that's where you sell lots of cars to the public or something like that, whatever silly story they told me. And I said, okay, sounds good, right? Who wouldn't want to work in have their own? And so we don't have a fleet department, but we think that you have potential, and we think that you could be our fleet department. Now you've got to understand that they had no intention of having a fleet department. They just figured I'd try that for a while, I'd quit when I wasn't making any money, and that would be that, right? That's what they thought. So, but I mean, I absolutely believed, gosh, I'm so stupid. I absolutely believed they wanted a fleet. Well, they weren't against having a fleet department. They just didn't believe I could get one. So, but you know what? I did. I got one for them. We actually had a fleet department. And, so the first thing I did was that they moved me upstairs and I had my own desk. Really, upstairs, out of the way from all the normal salespeople. I wasn't allowed on the, well, I had been doing pretty well. I didn't go back down and sell on the floor anymore, okay? That kept me off what they call the floor is where the average customer comes in, okay? And even though I had done some good stuff, like I remember one time we had a guy come in and nobody wanted to wait on him because he rode in on a bicycle. He looked like a homeless person with a bicycle, and he rode in on a bicycle, and none of the other stuff, you know, they used to call them ups when people came into it. People came into a dealership. They were called ups. So when this up came in, nobody wanted the upper. It was my turn or something. But anyway, I had the up, but nobody wanted him. They said, "Oh, go ahead and take him, Junior. We don't want him." So I didn't know any better. I mean, he came in on a bicycle. I didn't know the first thing about bicycles, but it turned out it was a very, very expensive bicycle. Okay, and you know, which is interesting in itself, right? So anyhow, the upshot of it was that I ended up selling him the most expensive car we had on the whole lot, because he had a lot of money. He had a lot of money, and he was very shy with people, and he wanted to pay cash for this car. It was called a Starion at the time, most expensive fancy car we had. And you know, when it came down to paying him, even though he was paying cash, they wanted some sort of credit app filled up about him. This was before cash laws. Not too much after that, because drug dealers were laundering drug money with and buying cars with cash, and he was not that. They made it illegal to anything over $10,000, and you had to explain the money or something. That's kind of a rule now. But back then it wasn't a rule, and he had done that. So he paid with cash, and the problem was when he went to fill out the credit form, you know, the credit form, you had to list some friends. I always wanted to do that. They want to know, I guess they want to know how to find you if you bail normally. So you got to list some people that have known you before and will vouch for you. If they called them up, would they like you? Okay? Wow, that was too much water on that brush. And so he looked at me and he said, "But I don't have, he said, "Can I put your name down?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, I don't have any friends, and you've been nice to me. Can I put your name down as a friend?" And it never occurred to me that people could go through life and not have any friends. Well, my mother never had any friends, but just superficial ones, but she never had a girlfriend she could call up and just shoot the breeze with and complain about Dad or anything. She never had that. But he was such, you know, I felt sort of sorry for him. It turned out his bicycle he was riding was the most expensive kind of bicycle they make, okay? And I know that because George, who also worked at the dealership, was kind of new there too. That's my, he was a bicycle enthusiast, so he knew about stuff like that. And this guy, you know, bought nice things. He just didn't have any friends, and he wanted to pay with cashier's checks because he didn't believe in banks. Okay, he had a thing with banks. He didn't want it, all his money was in cashier's checks. I know. You're going, what? I'm going, well, I did a little of that what stuff too, right? What? That can't be right. Yeah, but it was right, and all his So he brought in these cashier's checks to pay for the car, and all the other salespeople were so jealous because we didn't sell a lot of Starions. They were expensive items, right? So we just didn't sell a lot of those. And here's this guy buying one, but he came in the finance officer. Now, let me just tell you a little bit about the hierarchy of a car dealership. There's the general manager, who's top dog for everybody, yes? And then there's the managers, and there might be several of those. And then there's something called F&I, and F&I is the finance people, and they're the ones that work with the banks and the lenders and so forth, and help and process all the paperwork. And those people are high up on the food chain. I mean, really high up on the food chain, the F&I people. And pretty snotty, too. The girls, the lady that worked there was pretty snotty. And I remember, I mean, this is this is how long ago this was, is that like fax machines were new. The automobile people had them, but the average person didn't have a fax machine. Didn't come along. Technology was just, booming with the fax machines were kind of special. I mean, like I say, car dealers had them, but the average person didn't have a fax machine. And so I remember asking what a fax machine was, because I had no idea. So I was trying to understand it didn't go through the wires, and I didn't understand how the paper got faxed. It went through a machine, and then somehow it went to another machine somewhere else. I was so baffled by that whole concept. It's kind of sad, right? But I was. Anyway, I digress. But so the F&I people in general were kind of snotty, superior kind of individuals. I'm not saying everybody that does that is, but that's how they came across to me as I was, getting into the business of selling cars. So they came to me and they said, Ginger, we have a problem with your sale. And I was excited because there was a big commission on, car salesmen work on commission. And there was a big commission on that Starion. That was there was a nice little paycheck, okay? And so I was very excited about, getting that, car sold. And it turned out that he'd had these cashier's checks for so long that they were expired. I didn't know a cashier's check could be expired. They were expired. And which required him going to a bank and then getting them, giving them back and having them give him new ones, issue new ones, because that's what he needed to do in order for us to sell him the car. We couldn't use those cashier checks, and I was really afraid. The way he was a very kind of, he could have been the Unabomber for all I know. I mean, he was that strange, okay? Really, honestly. But I never held that against him. I was just selling him a car. I really didn't care if Jack the Ripper had come in. He was buying a car from me, and that was it, right? That's all I cared about. He was going to buy that car. One way or the other, he was going to buy that car. Yes and yes. So, he did go back and make good on those cashier's checks, which I was extremely pleased about, because I was honestly afraid he wouldn't. I really didn't think he would do it. I thought he would just, tell us all to shove off, and but he bought the car. But somehow, even though I had pulled off that marvelous deal, I was relegated to the fleet department, which they made up because they never had one. Now, stores like, when I say stores, automobile dealerships by themselves are considered stores. Like, what store did you work at? You know, the public doesn't really see that, but they see themselves as stores, okay? And so like a store like, say, Ford or Chevrolet or somebody like that, they have fleet departments, and the reason they do is, like, for instance, say you take a deal. You take say the electric company, and those electric people that work on an electric company, they all drive around, usually in white trucks. You know what I mean? There's all kinds of businesses, gas, electric companies. Somebody has to sell them those trucks. So they're generally buying, trust me, they're not buying Mitsubishis. They're buying, they're not buying Mitsubishis. But you understand, I don't know anything about cars, so I don't know what these people are buying, if anything. I have no idea, right? But again, it's all hilarious. I had no idea, okay? So I didn't know that there really was a fleet department for Mitsubishi was just really improbable, because you got to think about who buys, because it's really people who buy more than one car for their business. It's basically who you're catering to when you have a fleet department. Somebody's got to buy the cars, right? So anyway, I didn't know, so God, they offered me a title. I felt like I'd been promoted. I'd done so well with the Starion sale that they had promoted me. I really thought that, because this is, you know, but you're talking about someone that believed that the guy that gave us cake in France at 11 o'clock at night, that was a French tradition. I mean, you know, I've swallowed for a lot of things in my life, and this was just another example of how I just totally trust people. And when they say things like this, I really thought it was true, okay? So, anyhow, let's see, I'm going to come on over here and work on this one now. It's dry enough. So I get up there in the fleet department, and the first thing I do was I go around door to door to all the businesses in the neighborhood and say, "Hi, I'm from your local Mitsubishi dealer." And remember, having been a witness, I had no trouble going door to door and telling anybody anything. Right? So this was just another example of how that came in handy. And I said, you know, this is your local, you know, I'm your local Mitsubishi dealer, and we have a fleet department. And since you're a business, your employees are entitled to a fleet discount. Now, and like our salesman, like most car salesmen, I had developed the art of lying. Well, I actually came with that. I was very successful because I could lie through my teeth, and people believed it. I had no friggin' clue whether they were entitled to anything, right? But it sounded good, so that's what I told them, okay? Ought to be all right, see? So they believed me too, because I was very congruent. And anyhow, as I sit here and paint all my little pictures here for you, I had some success. People came from the businesses and wanted to buy cars. I had a dentist who wanted to get cars for his best employees. He wanted 4 cars, and he wanted to surprise them with cars as kind of a bonus for doing such a good job. And so I remember going down to the manager, and he's looking at me, kind of rolling his eyes. Now, the guy was close to the same age as me, but I always felt like I was talking to Methuselah, you know? He always came off like he was, like, had just infinite wisdom, and I don't know why he didn't think I had any, but, well, maybe because I believe stuff, but that's another story. But anyway, he told him he got this dentist, and he wants to buy all these cars for his employees. Because I told him we were the fleet department and we'd give him a good deal. We will, won't we? We will, right? We are going to give him a good deal, yes? And he says, of course we're going to give them a good deal, Ginger. That's a great job, right? So, anyway, we did. The dealership had never had anybody come in and want to buy 4 cars. This was kind of a good deal for them too, and they were not only shocked that I had pulled this off, but they were pleased too, and so we had a party for them, and we brought in refreshments, and we delivered their cars, and we used to have a sales board, and my name went up on the board that week as having sold all those cars, right? I mean, it was big time, right? Good times were had by all there, right? And so it was kind of a big deal. So then I was off and running with the fleet department, and back with my letters and stuff. So then I had this idea to go to Camp Pendleton, which was the Army base in the neighborhood, and we had some soldiers come in, and I figured out who to talk to at the military base, and I said, their bank, and I said, if we could put a car in a bank, in your bank, we're interested in selling the car, and you could have your financing there, because that's one of the first things that kids do when they join the military. Is they get a good paycheck, and the military based bank will finance usually a finance car from, unless the credit's just horrific. They can probably get a car. Okay. So and they said, yeah, okay, we could do that. And so they needed somebody, because I didn't, we had to drive the cars up. We put a car in, and like a truck, because we figured all the kids would want trucks, right? So we drove the car in there. You got to hear the story about the military base and the cars. I got to drive this. Okay. So when it came time to bring the truck in, they decided that's how I met. Really, George worked there, but he apparently had some experience with putting cars in places. Okay, inside buildings, because you had to do some stuff. So they told George to go up there with me. That's how I really got to know him a little more. Go on up there with me and make sure that we got the car in the bank, right? Because you have to put blocks, and it's a thing, and you can't ruin the floor. And there were some few things you had, little details, stuff you had to do, right? So let's see, what am I going to do next here? Something. Maybe this. Get my little pens out. Where's my black one? So, this is my Artisto pen. Okay, what do I need? Another pen here. What do I want here? This one. I love having all these colored pens. So anyway, so we did that, and it was very successful. I mean, we sold some cars. I mean, no kidding. We really did sell some cars because of that. I mean, it was extremely successful, And every week or two, we'd go up and change the cars out, okay? Well, they approached, unbeknownst to me, the dealership could see that the fleet department was going to go somewhere. They had just sort of done it as a gag for me, figuring I would just disappear if they did that, okay? But then they realized that they actually had the potential for a fleet department, and they didn't want it screwed up by somebody, you know, a girl, you know. Even though I had done it all, okay, that didn't matter. Didn't matter. No, nobody cared. Didn't matter that I had done it. We were going to have to, if we had a fleet department, they wanted to. So they told George that they would give him the fleet department and give him a pretty big salary. They raised his salary if he would just focus on the fleet department. And he said, well, what about Ginger? She started it. And they said, no, we just want you. She's just, our owner just isn't sure about a girl running it. We just think he would be doing it. And seriously, they did that. So George told them, and this is one of the reasons I later ended up marrying George, because he told them no, that I had started it, that wasn't right, and that if they weren't going to have me be part of the fleet department, they could pound sand, that he wasn't interested. And so instead, he split the salary with me. Rather than keep the whole salary, they didn't increase the salary for the fleet department. Because here's how sales, you have to understand how car salesmen are paid. Car salesmen are paid on commission. For everything that you sell, you get a commission of. And you're given about a month. And if they will pay you a minimum wage, like a waitress or something, for a month. But if you haven't gone past the minimum wage, in a month's time, you're fired. They'll help you get started for a month, and after that, no, they will not. That's it. If you can't get your act together in a month's time, wow, they just don't want you. Okay. So I know it's harsh, isn't it? It's a harsh world. So anyhow, George told him no. And so that's how we ended up with the fleet department. And I ended up in the fleet department also, okay? So, let's see, where else are we going with this? So then along came, Cinnamon was about 16, living at home. Her dad and I were not divorced yet, but we were on the verge of. Because I'm sitting there pulling in the income, not making sandals anymore, but I'm selling cars. And so anyhow, let's see, where were we with this? So I ran across, I don't know where, I was out somewhere, I ran across this lady. And she was from the South, but she worked for you guys remember timeshares when they first came around? Timeshares were really big in the 80s. In fact, my brother has had a timeshare that he bought years ago. He still has it in Hawaii. And I remember my sister-in-law buying a bunch of timeshares, and you know, timeshares were a big thing, and that's where you own the vacation property, you buy 1 week of it. Okay? I know that sounds great. They've talked these people, and you own it for a week. You're kind of responsible for maintenance, and you own the place for a week or 2 weeks, and you pick the month. So a Christmas timeshare thing would be, obviously, or Thanksgiving would be worth more than, say, say a November one or something, right? Just like cruise ships, for instance, have cheaper cruises in what they call off-season, okay? So, well, it takes a long time to get this little house in, doesn't it? This little store in? Just, you wouldn't think so, but just, one of the reasons I don't like doing buildings is because it's not that I can't do them, it's just nonsense. You know, just yeah, anyway, you get the idea, yeah. So, timeshare. So I met this lady, and see, how did that work? Oh, I know. Back with the bank, we were back in the bank, right? Back in the days when I got that, you know, that the bank was so successful. Yes, from the from the cars. I thought, where else could we put cars? That's what I thought. Where else could we do this? Now, as crazy as this seems, at that time, I think I was the first one, because I didn't get the idea from anybody else, to consider putting the cars in the mall for a Mother's Day sale and displaying the cars. And the boss for something, you know, he negotiated the price of what with the mall, because you had to pay for that, right? And he negotiated the price, and we put the cars in the mall, and which was a neat thing, right? Really, when you think about it, it's kind of clever and neat, and so that was, you know, that was successful. And George and I did that because so we had like 8 cars in the mall for this Mother's Day thing, and it was pretty successful. And then, you know, it was a way of advertising the dealership. We were getting a salary, so the immediate need to sell a car every week wasn't as critical as it might have been had we not had to do that. Okay. So this girl comes up to me at the mall, so I think that's where I met her, and she said, you know, we could do cars with the timeshares that we're selling. Okay, we could do that. What do you think? And I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, we could put, you could, I said somebody could win a car, because they always had prizes which you could win, you know, like a diamond ring and stuff. We had gone to enough of these timeshare nonsense things when I was married to Colby. We'd done a lot of those. And I remember going to these things, because you could, you know, win, like, I don't know what all the stuff they thought you could win, but you could win a bunch of stuff. And when Colby would show up and they'd ask him what he did for a living, he would write things on the application like wizard. He said he was a wizard. He told people he was a wizard. Kind of weird stuff like that. And then sometimes he'd write on there prize collector. Well, what do you do for a living? I'm a prize collector, right? And then when one guy got really mad at him for saying that, he said, listen, you wrote me. I didn't write you. Okay? That's how he saw this, right? So, and it was true. So, Cinnamon's dad Colby was kind of funny, really. He had a great sense of humor. I always thought the prize collector. So, I was familiar enough with the timeshare stuff. And so we went ahead and we put the cars in the mall, and then we had, they were willing to stand out there with their people, not that fancy girl from Dallas. She was too important to. Oh, and I remember this, something about her. Oh my God, she was very pretty, and I remember that she went in to see my boss. She was usually just crappy to me, and he fell all over her, like Lola Bridget had just showed up in his office. I swear, the man was smitten with this lady, and that's how they negotiated. You know, we were going to give away a truck or something. And that's how this was negotiated. So anyway, she was too important and to actually do the car thing, right? She wasn't going to do that, but she did. But she did hire. They had people they hired, and the thing how it worked was, you saw the car in the mall, and then you filled out we had a big sign that said "Win this car." And then in the application form, which was my idea, by the way, you put whether you were going to buy a new car in a year, now, never, and when you thought you might like to go on vacation. And then her people got got all the leads, and then they shared it with everybody in the dealership. So anybody that said they were going to be thinking about buying a car, anybody that said that, we got those leads. And so then it's hard to get leads when you're a car salesman. I mean, it's hard. I mean, I went around canvassing neighborhoods, but basically they wait for kind of the ups to show up, no pun intended, or they're hoping that somebody will come, right? And people to walk in the dealership, somebody calls and stuff like that, right? So this was a really boon for the dealership because there were a lot of car sales happen, and one of the deals I made was Cinnamon was 16, and I said, okay. By this time, Colby and I divorced yet? Close, and I had Cinnamon. I told the girl if I did this, they had to hire Cinnamon to be one of the people that had people fill out the cards, okay, and she was great at it, okay. So I know a little nepotism there, and then we also told her, George and I told her, just said, listen, there was also a trip to Hawaii, okay, and some other prizes besides winning a car, and I told her that basically, one of George's family members was going to come in, and he better win that trip to Hawaii, okay? That was the deal. I know it's just shocking, isn't it? But just, and they did give away the car, and the dealership was all very happy, okay? I mean, all of that was extremely successful, and this went on for a few months, okay? But there was just, though it finished it off for me with them, was in my travels and in my dealings with them, there was a young man that I remember I'd been canvassing the neighborhood, and he had come in from them, and he had wanted his whole life. He had very bad credit, but his whole life his dream was to own a white truck or something like whatever the color was. It was this truck. He wanted this in the worst way, okay? And and it turned out that his credit was so bad which is the reason he hadn't had a new vehicle. So I think we had to go to the Filipinos, and there was a group of sort of, well, money sharks, money lenders in up in LA, that when things got really bad, if you had a client that nobody else, that a real bank wouldn't finance, you could get these guys for like 25% interest or something like that. And I know you're shocked, right? But you could get those guys for that, and that was the deal on that. So we had gotten him. It took about a week to get him financed, because I said, I know it's going to be kind of tricky, right? To get you financed, it's going to be tricky, and we may be able to do it. But, like I say, I can't promise anything. It's not that we want to sell you a car. We're happy to do it. But, like I say, your credit is a little sketchy, and we'll see. So we got the Filipinos and group in L.A. Financed him. They got some little outfit up there so we got him financed, which he was so excited about. And we went out and we looked at his white truck that we'd found, whatever color truck this was. Let's just say it's white for the time being. Whatever it was maybe it's red. It was this truck he'd always wanted, and it was like when you're talking about selling cars to people, for those of you who don't know anything about it, if they have, say, 4 or 5 models of truck, you've got your basic cheap model, and then if you get the next model up, there's a little more amenities and so forth until the best one. I think there were probably 3 models of truck that year for Mitsubishi. So anyhow, he came from work. He'd stop off at work every day, and he said, "I can't believe I'm getting this truck." And he says, "You can't believe what it means to me. I can't believe I'm getting this truck." And I says, "Oh yeah." And we'd go out and he'd look at it and he'd hug his truck. I mean, look, you think this is funny? This guy wanted this truck, and he wanted it in the worst way. I know you're thinking, uh-oh, something bad's going to happen. You suspect it already, don't you? Because you know how things work. You're thinking, oh no, Ginger, surely he got his truck. And well, the problem was that when the Filipinos changed their mind about the financing or did something, oh, I know what it was. Somebody came in and wanted that truck. And even though we had it on hold for him while we were waiting for all the financing stuff to come through, which it had come through, but we were waiting for that, right? They sold it. Now, we had the ability to maybe go to another Mitsubishi dealer and get that truck for him, right? We did have that ability. But instead, my boss called me in and said, "We've sold the truck to somebody else. Tell him he has to take the white one." And I'm going, "What are you talking about? He's been out." I started to talk about how he'd been out there every day to get this truck, every day to see it after work, and practically just so happy to get this truck. I mean, it was just unbelievable. He was so happy to get this truck, yeah? And so I said, you can't do that, because he says we can do anything we like. And I'll tell you what, he says he has no credit. He either takes the white truck from us or he gets zip. He's not getting anything. And your job is to let him understand that, okay? That is your job. You make him understand that he is not getting zip from us. He gets the white truck or nothing, and you tell him, what did we tell him? I guess we sold it? Anyway, my job was to explain why he wasn't going to get this truck. He could have the white one or nothing. Okay? That's what they needed from me. I know, you're going, gosh, Ginger, that's terrible. I know, wasn't it? Just because he didn't understand that, there's a basic kind of principle that happens to people, which I certainly understood, that A, it was morally wrong. I know that you're sitting there thinking, you're the one talking about morals and you're, getting your own trip to Hawaii and all that stuff, right? But actually, I never did get the trip to Hawaii. We just told her that's what we wanted. We said we wanted something. We weren't trying to cheat someone else out of a trip to Hawaii, but we just, in order for us to do this deal, we wanted something from her. Okay, George and I did. So she ended up giving us $4,000 for setting up the deal, independent of the dealer, which I thought was fair, okay? So we weren't cheating anybody out of their trip or anything like that. We didn't do that. But I gotta dry something, you guys. And then I'll tell you what happened to him. So back to what happened to this young man. So basically, I told him that we had sold the truck to somebody else, and he had to take the white truck. And he said, but, you know, crestfallen is just such a powerful word. And yet I can't think of a better word to describe how this young man felt about this than that. I mean, he was crestfallen. And so unhappy. And then he went from being unhappy to mad. He was furious, you know, he was very, very unhappy. And just, you know, he did buy the truck. He did take the truck. But he said, I'm going to tell everybody never to do business with you people, ever. That's what he said. And what the guy didn't understand, the manager of the truck, and his reason, if it had been any other customer, they would have just gone to another dealership and got him the truck, or not done that, or lost money on it, or done something. But they never would have done that to him. Okay? They wouldn't have done it because that's just mean. And that they did. And it was mean, and that's what they did. And so I just didn't want to work for people that would do that. You know what I mean? I did not want to work for anybody where something like that was okay. Just didn't. So it ended up, I went looking for another job. I said, you know, George, I can't work here anymore. These people are just too dishonest for me. I just don't like it. And I'm going to look for another job. And I did. I looked and I went over to the largest Ford dealership. It was a bigger drive. Carlsbad was really close to where I live. I didn't have to, it wasn't a very big commute. Okay? But commuting all the way into San Diego was trickier. And so I ended up going down, and the first place I applied to hired me. And this was what they called a liner closer store, and a little bit different from from where I was used to working. By this time, Colby and I had gotten a divorce, and Cinnamon was up in Seattle with my sister, and I had changed, you know, dealerships, and now I was there working for. I'd got a job at the Ford dealership. Now I want to say that I'd like to tell you that changing dealerships had found me in a place where people dealt with you honestly, but that would be not true. Or dealt with their customers honestly. I thought for sure, if I changed dealerships, that I would ended up, it was just these people. These people with their lack of, you know, they're just really, I tell you what, I was very upset that they cheated, that they did that to that kid. I felt terrible about it. I just can't know how much I felt terrible about it. Really terrible. And so I got a job on a provisional basis as there were 27 salesmen. I'm the first woman they ever hired. Okay? Didn't have anybody. They have all kinds of women at car dealerships now, but back then I was like the token person. Okay? And I was looked at with suspicion, curiosity, suspicion, or lust from the other people. Okay? By this time, George and I were a couple, And but the warning with George, there was an early warning sign with George, and I didn't heed it. And I would say that to anybody that gets in relationships with anybody. You know, when you're young and when you're older, you have that. There was an early warning sign with him, which I chose to ignore. It still worked out all right, but, well, there were pluses and minuses, but, you know, I'm not sure that that was, you know, totally the case with that. But anyway, the warning signs, which, so moving on, I'm just still painting my nice little picture here. And I will just go ahead and add some more tape places. I don't think I quite got that straight. Let me just do this. Better, okay. Well, just remind me about what the early warning signs were with George. We won't go into that now. We have a lot of story time. But anyhow, so I go to work at the liner closer store, and what that meant is that you had a person that sold the car out on the floor, and then because it costs a lot of, you know, if you've ever watched Shark Tank, that story about Shark Tank, they always ask you about what the acquisition costs are. Have you ever noticed that? They often ask that. How much per customer did it cost you to get it? And businesses like to know things like that. Yes. So let's see. I need to do. I think I'm going to do this. Gotta put my glasses on to see where my lines are. Okay, I guess I'm gonna do this. Gotta come straight down from this post. So anyhow, in a liner closer store, the salesperson lines up the sale and gets it all ready, and they're all ready to buy it. And you bring them into the office to talk about how much it's going to cost in terms and stuff like that, right? And then the closer comes in, and he sits down with the salesperson and introduces himself, and how was your experience with Ginger, and how did you like it, and how are you enjoying, you know, and what, you know, this is a great car, and we want to make sure that you get it, make sure that you're happy with it, and so forth. And like that, right?
Sounds like chit chat.
Yeah, like that. And then he proceeds to tell you how much it's actually going to cost you to have the car, and then they go into negotiations. From that point on, it's a negotiation. So my first day at my very first customer, and I still remember them, my very first customer was this kind of an older couple, and they were very sweet. I remember that. They were just extremely nice. And owning a new car, we looked at a car, and owning a new car was kind of a, you know, they really wanted a new car, and it was very important for them that they had one. And they had, you know, it was a kind of a new experience, okay? And so, but they were from the Philippines, and you know, if they were buying something in the Philippines and somebody said something's $10, then the first thing you do is you offer them 5 cents or something, and then see how the negotiations go up from there. So they were negotiating pretty hard with my manager. Okay, I'm gonna dry that. Okay, and I'll tell you what happened. So, like I say, they were negotiating pretty hard with my manager. And it wasn't going well. But, you know, they weren't on. And, you know, he was, finally they said, and this was what I thought was so cute, they said, okay. I said, we're going to go ahead and buy the car because Ginger was so excited about us having it, and we don't want to disappoint Ginger. Now, come on. So we had a, you know, and the manager looked at them, and he looked at me. And that's when my relationship with that dealership changed completely, okay? Because suddenly I was a person who perhaps knew a little bit about sales and people and shopping. And so we, anyway, they got the car and they were extremely happy with it. And then what I did was I learned this kind of from Zig Ziglar, because I was listening to his tapes all the time on the way to work, which I had about a 40-minute commute. So I put, let's see, tapes work. Oh, I asked everybody to write me a recommendation letter. If you really like this, here's the address of the dealership. Would you send me a recommendation letter, please? It would mean a lot. And they did. Okay? They did. And I had piles of those where nobody else had any. They were, you know, you wouldn't think that would, those little things make a difference in how you're looked at. So when people would come to my desk to buy a car, I made a point of showing them my recommendation letters. Well, who wouldn't, right? And then sold more cars. So the first month I was there, out of 27 car people, I had sold more cars than anybody else. True story. And I was top salesman, and they offered to give, they used to give people rings for that, right? But they offered me a ring, they wanted to give me cash because they didn't have any women-size rings. They didn't have any female rings. And I said, nope, got to have a ring, don't want money. Money just goes. I still have to show you guys the ring sometime. I think I still have it in the jewelry box. So it looks like a class ring, only it says Center City Ford on it. So anyway, I got my ring. And by that time, George was still working for Mitsubishi, but I was making much more money at Ford than anything. I was making a lot of money at Ford compared to what I was making at Mitsubishi. And I told him, I said he should come apply for the job here, okay? And but one of the things that Ford did was that they would have, in order to encourage their salespeople, they had something called spiffs. And a spiff is a prize they put, sometimes it's sponsored by the company itself, like Ford. Sometimes it's sponsored by them. And sometimes it's sponsored by, got to dry this and do another coat. Hang on, I'll tell you about spiffs. And sometimes, like I say, sometimes it's sponsored. It's like spiffs, and so the dealership could sponsor it, or they had a thing where the Ford company sponsored it, and they would just got to put this little shadow up here. They would, if you sold the car, they would call Ford, then they would do it immediately, and like I think it was or sometimes if you sold 3 cars on a Saturday, you'd get this, or if you sold a car that they were trying to get rid of, and anyway, they would call Ford up, and they would be and Ford would tell you what the spiff was. There'd be some sort of contest, and you got to find out what the spiff was. Okay, so anyway, so by the so I could make $5,000 in a weekend. I know it sounds crazy, right? Just through spiffs and car sales. Now, not every weekend, but I mean, you could. It was possible to up at Mitsubishi. It wasn't possible to survive on that, right? Now, the thing of it is that that's like 90%. The statistics are that in a job of sales, like 10% of the sales, 90% of the money goes to 10% of the people selling. Pretty much anything like that, right? I don't know if you've ever heard that. Got to dry this. And you have to appreciate, at this time in my life, I didn't have any trust fund money coming in. You're going, oh, boo-hoo, poor baby, right? And I had none of that. And I was, supporting myself in Cinnamon because Colby wasn't paying any child support at that time. So it's the two of us. I was paying. He was going to eventually, when the divorce decree came through, he had to pay us like $200 a month. And Cinnamon thought that should just go to her for a clothing allowance. I don't know why she thought that, but she did. She understand that. I was weird, right? And so anyhow, I told George, I said he ought to come on over to apply for a job over here. I said, but they frown on the thing that they didn't like it at Mitsubishi when we came a couple either. The thing we learned about there is that it didn't serve us to let anybody know we were a couple. Okay, it didn't go. So I said, you can't. I said, what you're going to do is I'm going to pretend that you rent an apartment from me at my house, and that you live in Lone Jack Road, Unit B. That's where you live. Okay. We're going to tell them that. If they ask you where you live, and we don't know each other from Adam. We commute. We're commuting because we can to save on gas, but we're certainly not dating. And you just happen to live down the road from me, and happen to sell cars. Just basically is what we told people. Okay. And that worked out pretty well because, and that really did. And I remember one time we decided to, I borrowed some money to remodel our house. And George's grandmother had died in Louisiana, and he had to go back for the funeral. So he had gotten permission from them to take a leave of absence. Oh, because we had insurance with them too. We didn't want to lose our insurance. And when you're selling cars, you do pretty well. We had insurance. So the funny story about it was that then when he got back, he didn't, he was just gone for weeks and weeks and weeks because basically he was staying home from work just working on remodeling the house. And I remember that one of the managers came to me and said, how many times is George going to dig up and bury his grandmother? Do you think he's ever going to come back? Okay. I mean, come on, you guys. There's some fun in this, right? So, I know, you're just thinking, surely not, right? But yes. So, anyhow, I'm going to dry this too. This is why I really probably won't be doing a lot of any of these. This is probably the last building I'm going to do, or maybe a couple more, but that's it, you guys. I like to stay with landscapes. They're so much faster. So anyway, I worked at Mitsubishi, and I was the top salesperson. I had the top sales out the top three, either top salesman or the top three every month. I stayed in the top three, never got below that. And they tried hiring other females, thinking that was it, but it wasn't it. That's not why I was successful, interestingly enough. Okay. And see, where did I put that brush? Did you fall in the water? Here it is. So, I remember I was not friendly to any of the guys that worked there. George got along with everybody. He was one of those people that even when I got divorced, and I told Colby I was going to be marrying George, he says, I get that, everybody likes George. And he had a way of just being congenial with people, and people liked him, wouldn't you say, John?
Oh, yeah.
He's kind of an idiot, but people liked him. Okay? That's kind of unfair, but, people did like him. Still do. And he had ability to be able to regardless of anybody's social status, he could relate to them. Okay? So anyway, George had all kinds of friends at the dealership, but I had none. I wasn't interested in a relationship with anybody. My only interest was in making sure that everybody was still eating and we were doing okay, right? That was my main thing. Okay? So one time George said to me, nobody likes you, Ginger. And I said, and I care why. Just, why would I care? You gotta understand, I don't care. I'm not here for a popularity contest. I am just trying to, survive all this business. And again, listening to sales tapes every day on the way to work. And like that. So anyway, everybody liked George. Nobody liked me, particularly. There's a couple people that did. There was, but and nobody guessed nobody guessed that we were dating. Now I remember that that particular dealership, they had a girl at the front who was in charge of the keys. So if you wanted to demo a car to somebody, okay, she gave you the keys. Okay, and this girl was extremely pretty. It's so funny how you remember about her. I remember her name, and she was extremely pretty. And and would flirt with all the guys. And her husband, she was married, and her husband was a deputy sheriff or policeman of some kind. Yeah, he was a policeman of some kind, okay? And she would be blatant, she would blatantly say how lonely she was, and that he wasn't a very good lover. And I mean, she talked about the most extraordinary things. And I mean, I don't shock you. Oh, well, I guess I do shock easily. That's probably one of my problems. I shock easily. And the stuff this would come out of this woman's mouth was just, well, shocked the poo out of me, right, what she would say. But what was even more shocking, and those stupid men, they all ate it up. Like, they absolutely believed her. Like there was any way she was going to have an affair with any of them, okay? She just did this because she could. She did this because she could mess with them. I know. Shocking, right? And she wore these low-cut outfits, okay? And she had wires sticking out of her chest and then going back into her shirt because she had herpes. And that was some sort of treatment for it. And she was more than happy to talk about having herpes. just, I know, you're going, oh my gosh, yeah, that's one of those, oh my God. And like I say, everybody liked her. Well, and again, she was full of promises that she was never going to keep. And I'm sure the minute that it was anybody even thought that might happen, that the boyfriend would pop in and give everybody a good idea of how nothing was ever going to happen with her, right? But so she felt pretty safe in whining about her love life and the fact that she didn't have one, and the guy was never home. And gosh, wouldn't it be nice to have a real man make love to her? I mean, honestly, the conversations this lady had at a dealership, there's all men. Now, there were women that worked in the dealership, and they were in the office. They worked in the office. And there was, probably about 12 of them or something, and they were responsible for the paychecks and answering the phone. The girl that did the keys didn't answer the phone. The people at the back in the back office, they were the ones that answered the phone. Okay? So, George hadn't been there a couple of days where he would get these phone messages from if there was a phone call, if you were up, you got to, you took turns getting a customer. It was rotated unless somebody specifically called for you, okay? And George kept getting phone calls from people, and for the life of me, I could not understand how he was getting them, because we just got there. He didn't know anybody. He didn't have any customers coming over from Mitsubishi. I mean, that Carlsbad was, an hour away. There's nobody from Carlsbad that was going to be coming, wanting him for sales. I was just dumbfounded, because here I was, doing well with the customers I had, right? I really was. I was doing very well with that. But most of the time, I had to rely on people that walked in when it was my turn to wait on them. And here George had all these customers. And I just couldn't figure out where they were coming from. Well, he would go out and get a box of donuts and go into the back office there where all these women were working, right? And give them, "Hi ladies, how you doing?" and flirt with all of them. And these are some middle-aged looking librarian kind of females, right? I'm not being mean, but and he would flirt with them like they were the most marvelous women he'd ever met. And loved every one of them, and gosh, you know, anyway, he just flirted with them outrageously. He just did. And of course, then when the phone rang, they made sure that about every few phone calls went to George. And then he went into the back office where they were, into the repair place where they repair the cars. Okay? And he told the repair guys that if they sent him any customers, that he'd be happy to kick back any of his commissions. Because a lot of times people would bring their car in for a repair, and then they didn't have to, if they had to wait for it, they would just send them to the showroom to look at cars, right? So, you're getting this, John? Shocking, isn't it?
It's just unbelievable.
I mean, just work the system. And when he told me that, I said, you shit, you know, just, why wouldn't they support me because I'm the lone female, right? Why wouldn't they want to support me? And I said, but he brought them donuts. And of course, you know, I mean, I got that suddenly, okay, donuts.
Yeah, donuts always win.
Donuts kind of trump. I just thought the women's lib thing would get me some loyalty. Is what I thought. But I promise you, it got me none. None. And but that was George. But I had learned a trick from listening to Zig Ziglar's tapes. And one of the things that, and also from just that story about the kid that ran across the block and stuff, you know that one? I had some stories from that, right? You know, some lessons I'd learned from that, right? But also from when Colby and I, or when I turned 21, we had a little bit of an inheritance from the trust fund, and we went to Japan. I took a tour of Japan for a month, seriously, in other Asian countries. And when we were there, I think I got that a little wide. Don't know that that matters, but, well, it's going to be wide. Just let me dry that and just kind of thin it out a little bit, okay? When Colby wanted, back when I was 21, the best cameras in the world were in Japan, and they were the cheapest if you bought them in Japan. That's just how it was. Okay? So, I just need to make this a little bit thinner. Cut off about that much. And so, but anyway, when we were in Japan we went to this one camera shop on this tour, and they wanted a lens. Colby wanted to see a lens that might go with the camera we were looking at buying. And the guy didn't have one, so he sent his helper, just like the story in Zig Ziglar, about a couple of blocks away, and the kid went tearing down to this other dealership. In about 10 minutes, he came running back, panting like a racehorse, and had the lens in hand. And of course, we felt very bad about the kid running to get it, because now, I say this when I want to say it. Don't get mad at me when I say it. Being Americans, right? Just, oh my God, this poor kid, he had to run, right? So, of course, we have to buy it, right? So, when I was selling cars at the Ford dealership there, the Ford store, and one of the things I discovered that was very handy was when it came time, somebody would be looking at a car. The lot was huge, absolutely huge. I would run back to the dealership to get the keys. Yeah, just tear back to get the keys. And this impressed people in some sort of strange way, just kind of the way I was impressed when that kid did it in Japan. And I got a lot of people, bought cars from me because of, probably because just in general, the way things were with them and me. So anyway, one time, a man came in to buy a car, and he was from Saudi Arabia. And he was from the House of Saud, which is their royal family. And he could have picked anybody to wait on him, but somehow it was an up or something like that. But I ended up waiting on him, and I gave him permission. I said, listen, I understand cultures are different in your country, and your women don't even drive. So if you would like one of the men to show you this car, I have no problem with that. I'll just, if we did that, then if you had a customer, here was the thing. If you had a customer that you didn't think you could sell to, and he was one of your ups, okay? The thing that they wanted you to do was to flip him to somebody else, and then you would split the commission, okay? And rather than lose the sale, okay? They were very, if you lost a sale with somebody, the first thing they said to you was, why didn't you flip him, okay? So it was your moral obligation to flip anybody, okay? That, let's see, is this dry yet? Yeah, kind of, okay? That wasn't, that you couldn't sell a car to, okay? That was your obligation. And we had sales meetings. And, and talked about how they wanted things done and how they wanted sales to happen, okay? We did that. We had sales meetings, and they went over these rules with you about how they wanted that to be, okay? And so, you had to flip them. Okay, and so I did offer to let him be, to let somebody else wait on him. Okay. See, this is coming all the way down here, like this, I think. But see, where am I? I've got this. Now I'm lost. I don't even know what I'm taping now for a minute here. This is what? Okay, what am I taping? So he said, oh no, that he was fine with that. And so I went ahead and, took him out of the car, and we drove it, and then he drove it, and he wanted to buy the car, and he wanted to finance it. And the dealership flat refused. They said would not allow him to finance the car. And I said, but the guy's rich, he's got great credit. Well, why can't he finance a car? And they said, because he's so rich that he could just take the car and put it on one of his boats and sail it back out of the country, and we would have no way to repossess it. And that was an interesting thing, right? But he ended up buying the car, and he just had cash, he bought it, okay? But the idea that, so there were some, kind of odd little things, things that you learn, right? So he could do that. But mostly we had, mostly it was fine as far as, people, buying things, as far as, mostly we just had ordinary people that just came in. I never had any celebrities, San Diego really didn't get a lot of celebrities. Didn't have any of those. And Let me dry that and put the next piece of tape down. And one day, and it was interesting because again, there's like 27 car salesmen, and like I'm the lone woman here, like the Lone Ranger. And for the most part, people were nice, and but a lot of the salespeople came and went because they just couldn't keep they couldn't make it, because like I say, like 10% of the people were making most of the sales. But one day there was a man, he came in, and his name was Rocket, because he was on speed. I really never heard of speed, but he was on speed apparently. And he just, and the dealers all knew it, and they hired him anyway because he was a very good salesperson. And Rocket got into debt with with management on something, and he owed him money and he couldn't pay it back. I don't know when he borrowed money for drugs or what it was, but he ended up owing the money, and couldn't pay it. And so, if you sold a car and they had to order the car, when the car came in, they would call you up, and then you would come in and deliver the car, right? And so I knew a car was coming in that weekend because I had sold it. And, that was unlike Mitsubishi, you could custom order a car from the factory. So I had this customer, it's a pretty big sale. And anyway, sorry, I'm just kind of phased out here with all my little pieces of tape, just going, I have to do something. What am I doing? I don't remember. Something's happening here. Okay, so anyway, so rather than call me in that Sunday to deliver the car, because car dealerships were open on Sunday and Saturday, and you worked weekends. And if somebody wanted to buy a car, and it took till 12 o'clock at night to sell them one, and finish the financing, nobody left, nobody went home, F&I, nobody left until that person got the car, okay? That's just how it was. Nobody was leaving. So, anyway, Rocket, I found the next day, Rocket had come in and they had given my car to him. Seriously, they gave him, can you imagine? They gave my car to him. And that was somehow, and this was not okay with me, surprisingly. I was hopping mad. I've been mad in my life a lot of times, and John can tell you I can get hopping mad, but that was new levels of hopping mad when they did that. Oh, gosh, I couldn't believe, they sold my car to somebody, they gave my commission to somebody else, wasn't even his, because he owed them money, which is my problem, how, kind of thing. And I remember crying. I'd never cried at a car dealership before, but I remember crying then. And bursting into tears and just going into management, just furious, just no words for how upset I was. It's funny, money has that effect on me. You know what I mean? Could have done a lot of stuff, could have insulted me, could have done all kinds of stuff that they did at that dealership, but fool around with my commissions, that was just not going to fly.
Mess with my money, you're messing wrong.
Yeah, that's it. So as my eyes were watering up, and I was, you know, giving them all the reasons why they were just horrible people, mean and awful, and bad things should happen to them for doing this to me, right? And what kind of a group was this? And that was awful. One of the guys who admired me greatly, okay, took me aside because he had been very curious about me because he couldn't understand how I could be why I was such a good salesman, because I really was one of the best salespeople, if not, you know, and how I could be so good at it. And he said, well, did you go to college? What is the thing? And told him I did art. And so there was no explanation for why I had any ability to sell cars, except for the fact that I was listening to car tapes every day on the way home and was getting to be a better salesman all the time, yeah? So anyhow, he took me aside and he said, listen, Ginger, he said, you never, ever want to let anybody see you cry here. You can't. Do not let anybody see you cry. Just don't do it. He says so he said, I'll tell you what we'll do. The next time sometimes customers will come in and there'll be no salesperson. And so the dealership, one of the managers, we had something, I got to show you in an illustration. We had something called the tower. Come on, you're getting a real lesson in car dealerships, aren't you? Kind of shocking, isn't it, John? Really?
Yeah, really, yeah.
So if you, let's see, where's my tub of towels? I really get this cleaned off. So we had something called the tower. And the tower at the Ford store, she had the floor, where the salespeople had little cubicles and booths and little desks. And then on the main floor, there were cars inside. The really fancy cars were inside. And then there were cars everywhere. And then there were cars in the back lot. And but there were the fancy ones, you know, inside the showroom. And then to the left of the showroom, and I'll kind of show you how this worked. To the left of the showroom was the tower. So if you came in this way, like this, and this was the door coming in right here, right there, you're coming in this way. So there were cubicles for the salespeople, and there were some cars. Okay. And but back up here, at the edge, high up was what was called the tower. And the salespeople, the managers, were behind the tower. And when you had a deal, sometimes it was just one, sometimes there were more. When you went to the tower, and then for instance, the girl that had the herpes, she had a little desk here and she gave out keys. Okay. Then there was a hall down here that took you in the back, and there's like behind this wall here was all the women in the office that George gave donuts to, and then there was a kind of a door way back here that led you to service. Then there was a big meeting room in here that wasn't available for the public to see. Okay. And you came into the dealership like that, okay? So, like my desk was right here. So when you had to walk up to the tower and you gave them, and then there were other little booths in here. There were closing booths in here for the liner closers. So if you had a deal, you went back into here for the closing. The liner closers came in. Maybe the towers, or somebody would come in there like that, right? For closing, not necessarily where your desk was. Okay? So now that you got the whole big picture here, yes? So if somebody came into the dealership and all the salesmen were busy, the tower would then take care of selling the car. Okay? That's what the tower would then do that. And so then they couldn't keep the commission, so they had to give the commission to some salesman. And this was what was termed in the business a spoonie.
A spooning?
A spoonie. They gave you the commission. They gave you Yeah, it was a spoonie, okay? That's what that was called. So, he told me that not to worry, that management would see that I got even more money in a future commission from a spoonie, but not to make a fuss. If I didn't make a fuss and just kept it together, I'd be okay. But he assured me if I made a fuss, it would go badly. Just suck it up. And what they were doing was, was major crummy. Such a thing as major crummy. It wasn't crummy. It was really crummy. But they, true to their word, they did in fact do a spoonie for me, and I got the I'm sorry, I'm thinking about painting this thing in here like this. A little gas pump. So I did get that, but I never liked Rocket. And he later got fired. And justifiably so. The guy was a total jerk, and he got fired. But I didn't have, I'm one of those people, I just didn't have fond, fuzzy feelings about these guys after that spoonie incident, as you could well imagine, right? So even though I was making pretty good money, I decided that I wasn't sure I wanted to work for them anymore. Because they were mean. Now, it also happened that one of the things, the biggest places where cars were, that car dealerships make money is on the used cars, okay? So, they would, if you went in and you want, and so if somebody came on the lot, let's just kind of make this clear, if somebody came on the lot, I'm going to dry that and tell you about used cars. If somebody happened to come on the lot and want to buy came into the used car, here's the thing about ups. Most of the salesmen were lazy, totally lazy, okay? And I say that kindly, but they were just lazy. Let's get over it. They were lazy. So if I saw somebody come on the lot, I actually got off my tush and walked out the door to greet them. Yes? And
seems like the right thing to do.
Yeah, I would walk out the door and greet them. And so anyhow, those guys, so sometimes I would run into people, because to the right of us was the used car lot. And the used car lot people were real, if our people were lazy, the used car lot people were really lazy. really, really lazy. And they had no qualms about, I think I'll just make this dark down here. They had no qualms about just sitting there and let people wander around the lot, and eventually they'd get off, they'd be in a chair, maybe a rocking chair out there, I don't know. They'd be that, and then they'd see somebody, and then maybe they might wander down to the with a cart, you know, to the lot, and offer to wait on somebody. But they were of all the people, they were absolutely the laziest, okay? And the worst, in my opinion. They were just the worst. And and they kind of hung out by themselves. They thought they were better than the rest of us because the markup on used cars was tremendous. They didn't have all the fun of the spiffs like we did, okay? But the markup was so big on used cars that they made really good money, even though there wasn't any of that. Does that make sense? So, well, I was just doing something. Now I forgot what it was. It's coming back to me. I had a plan on something. Here it is. So anyhow, but the used car salesmen, because they were lazy, you know, they weren't out on the lot. So if saw somebody out on the lot, not necessarily in their lot yet, but I saw them walking on the porch, right? I'd go out and say hi, you know, and they said, "Oh, I'm here to buy a used car." And I said, "Well, why are you buying a used car?" And he says, "Well," he says, "because, you know, really that's all I can afford. I couldn't qualify for a new car." And I said, "But what if I told you you could? If you could." This was one of the famous sales pitches. If I could, would you? Just keep that in mind. Just remember that. It's good for parenting too. If I could, would you? Okay? That is the key thing to this sentence. If I could, would you? If I could figure out a way for you to have a new car instead of a used one, and it wouldn't cost you any more money, maybe even less, would that be something you might be interested in? And yeah, well, come on. I mean, who doesn't want a new car over a used car, right? So I was flipping these customers before they ever got to the lazy used car people who were just sitting there on their keisters. Yeah? Because they couldn't get off their keisters to work. But I have to tell you, this did not go unnoticed at some point. And the manager in charge of the used cars was pissed because he could see what I was doing. They never even made it to his crappy salesman. He never made it to those guys, right? Why? Well, because, drum roll please, I got to him first. I actually got my butt out the door and got to him first. Okay? Yeah? So, now you've got some angry, so in fact he complained to the boss about it. Of course he did, right?
You're taking sales from them.
He was taking sales from him. But they weren't unhappy because I'm just trying to think where I am here with the picture while we're all chatting. They weren't unhappy with me at all, okay? So but the other guy was, and he was kind of out for blood. So they were explaining to me I couldn't do it because here's what happened. Now one of the managers of the used car place actually liked me. I think he kind of admired me, but it was not true for all of them. And got to put a little post in here. Got to dry that so I can put my post in. It's coming along though, isn't it? Isn't it interesting how it just all sort of, it takes a while for these, doesn't it?
A little bit, but it's coming along beautifully.
I would like to put a different gas pump in here. Could you find me a picture of a different gas pump that could go here? I know we've got some from some of our pictures. So, like for instance, and it's negotiable. You know, all things are negotiable as far as buying a car. But those are the things. The used cars are the ones that people don't realize it, but they make the most money on. And anything that was over a certain age was sent to Mexico because you couldn't sell. A lot of the cars ended up in Mexico that they couldn't sell. Easily, okay? They ended up in Mexico. And I was looking for another car, a car, and I kept my eye out for a used, some used cars that might be coming in that might be nice to have, right? And I might be able to figure out a way to get one. And their car came in, there was an old Mercedes, and it had been only owned by some old people, truly. And so anyway, the head of one of the used car salesman managers, he said, "Ginger, you don't want that car. You really don't want that car. The maintenance cost on it is huge." But of course I didn't listen because I wanted the car. And he was right, it was terrible maintenance on it. Cost so much to fix anything if it broke, okay? And it just did, it was just very, very pricey to have it, to do any kind of repairs on it. But nonetheless, a lot of work on this little picture here, isn't there? I can not have to tape this one. So I decided that I would try a different Ford dealership. So I went downtown to a place called Center City Ford. And oh no, I was working at Center City. This was right down in Houston. And it was, if I thought that people at my Ford dealership were ruthless, these guys were like the mafia selling cars. I swear, they were just. And in the sales meeting, they said that when a customer came on, and this is what was said in the sales meeting, right? When a customer came on, that you wanted, that you should tear off the top of his head and shit down the hole. That was the direct quote. I'm sitting there, I'm still getting over Rocket being, on some sort of drugs, because I didn't know the first thing about drugs. And now we have people talking about shitting on customers. And just, And one of the things one of the ways they did to get customers into a dealership, okay, one of the most effective ways was the newspaper. So they'd advertise a car, and it was called like a lost leader. In other words, they were willing to sell this car for less money than normal because a lot of people would come in, and then they would say was, "I'm sorry, we sold that car."
Can you believe it? It's already gone.
It's already gone, but you know, we've got others nice and we can make a good deal. That worked for years for them. And then the attorney of California said that you had to put the VIN number on the ad. You couldn't just advertise a car, that there better be a VIN number, okay? And otherwise...
It better really exist.
Yeah, the car better really exist, not some imaginary car that you sold, but it better exist, yeah? So, yeah, I know, I know, you're all just shocked, right? So here I am working at this dealership, and they have run a Sunday ad, as expected, yes. And though this lady comes in to buy the car, and we can't. I think they tried it was sold. They couldn't do that, so then they going to get one of my fun little new. Look at that. Going to get a new thing. They said it was sold, and then they said that the car was. They had the car hidden at a lot across town in like a. And she insisted we go get it. She insisted. She stayed there till she was on to them, man. She stayed there, and until they went and got the car. But mostly they didn't have to. Mostly they did not have to get the car at all, because they just didn't. They just they had people bamboozled. And then something that happened that car dealerships, a lot of people don't know, is that they pay what's called flooring charges. And they don't, when a dealership has all these cars, they don't own them. They borrow the money from the bank for 30 or 60 or 90 days, whatever it is, and they just pay a little interest on that. And it's usually interest-free for 30 days, and then they have to start paying interest on the car, on the loan. If they haven't sold the car within 90 or 30, I've forgotten what it is, but they have to sell the car. If they haven't done it, then they have to pay. So there's a way to look at a dealer, you know, a car tag at a dealership. There's a way to look at it.
See how long it's been sitting there.
And see how long it's been sitting there. Because the longer it's sitting there, the better deal you can get on it. Okay? And like, and there's usually spiffs on cars that you're trying to find a new home for. Okay? So that's the other thing, is that I mean, they absolutely they need these cars to go away. Okay? So if you can, and then the other thing is that they answer, like Ford dealerships answer to Ford. Okay? They absolutely answer to Ford. And they well, we'll continue on with this. So the better deal is this: you can buy a car at the last day of the month when they have to have so many sales. So the other thing is they have to have so many sales and show that many sales. And so the more sales they have, the more cars they can get next time from Ford, okay? And also in California, for so many, if they want to sell like a sports car that got really bad gas miles, this was way back then too, okay? All right, if you wanted to sell something like that, then you absolutely had to sell. You had to sell so many like cheap cars, gas efficient cars. So they had to meet that quota too, not just the other thing. Absolutely, they had to meet that quota. All right. So the best deal anybody could get would be if they got a car. If you buy a car, if you go into a car dealership, and assuming now it comes down to financing. Ideally speaking, if you go to your own bank or credit union and you get the financing, okay, that's the best. But then you know exactly what the interest rate is. Because if you rely on the dealership's interest rate, the people in F&I, just like you're making a commission on the car, they're making a commission on the financing. So, for instance, they get like the financial, I suppose it's like, I don't know, 5% or whatever the interest rate is. Suppose it's any of that stuff, right? They get a piece of the interest, and so the F&I people absolutely want to want the financing on it. They want it, and then they want to be able to sell you all kinds of wonderful stuff, like insurance and not car insurance, but I don't know, like help me out here, John, because I'm having hard trouble think because I'm focusing so much on this. That you get.
Well, they want to sell you all the accessories, the service maintenance,
all that stuff.
And every add-on they can add on.
It's called LAHA.
What?
LAHA.
LAHA?
LAHA.
Uh-huh.
So they want to sell you LAHA. Okay?
Whether you want it or not.
Yeah. And so if you come in with financing from somewhere else, then their chances of selling you some LAHA are pretty scarce, right? So this doesn't work for them. Yep. So they want to sell you, so they would prefer the financing. Absolutely. That's what they would absolutely prefer. It's the financing on the car. But you as a consumer, they may be able to beat your financing, and you ought to give them the chance. But you have to have something that you can negotiate with, because it's all a negotiation. And usually it's the used car department that's in charge of let's see. Appraising, when you bring a car into trade, the used car department is the head of the used car department, it's his job, because he's going to have to sell it, right? Or trade it or sell it to Mexico or whatever he's going to do. He has to in order for him to make these huge deals on the trade-in of your car, this guy has to be able to be able to make the most profit. So how this works is that they have a script that, no, you guys are getting such a good education. Everybody should really listen to this. You should tell people to listen to these, to this particular
Before you go out
video.
and buy a car.
If you're going to buy a car, you should listen to the whole thing. Because, so what they do is you come in with the trade, and the salesperson has a script on what they are supposed to say to you. And got to dry this, got to keep going, right? I know it's a lot of story here, right? And then we're getting, and it's sort of unfolding with our little house, right? So a person comes in with a used car, and a lot of times they say, I've got to go get my car cleaned up, and then I'll come back and then we'll talk about my car, right? And the line is, you don't ever want them to leave, because they could leave and change their mind. So what you say is, oh, it doesn't matter, they don't care. Oh my gosh, do they care? If they have to clean that car up and clean it up and pay somebody to, empty out the trash and wash it and, that kind of stuff, and do all that. Trust me when I tell you that they care, okay? They really care. There's no doubt about it that they care. So, and it will affect how much you get in trade on your car if you make them do it. But Ginger, you said they didn't care. Well, I know, but they care. They care. So then you may decide that you got a Kelly Blue Book is something people get, right?
Yeah. What do you think of that one?
Oh, thank you. It's so much better than the one I had. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, okay. That's perfect. Just leave it there. Yeah, leave it there. So yes, they care.
That area. There you are.
Oh gosh, do they care? So anyhow, and then so you got this Kelly Blue Book, right? John got me a new gas station to put in, which I'm very grateful for. It's a different gas pump. You have to be careful. You can't use just anybody's, because they're, just can't. So anyhow, so they got, where was I? Oh yeah. So they care. So you got this Kelly Blue Book, and it says, and you go through all the things in a Kelly Blue Book. It says, well, how many doors, does it have 4 doors or 2 doors? And does it have air conditioning? And is it automatic transmission? And is it in good shape? And they have all these things, questions that they're asked, okay, that are relevant to whether or not, to the price of your car. This is all relevant to that, okay? And so you go back with the Kelly Blue Book, and you come in with the idea of how much you think this car's worth. And so maybe you think it's worth $4,000. And but you've had this car a long time, and you did some stuff to it. It's just not a $4,000 car. You did all this tricky stuff. You just got new brakes on it, okay? And why should you have to, eat that if you're going to get another car? Let someone else eat that, right? You just got new brakes. And let's see, let me get a different brush. So you go to the car dealership, and then you're gonna talk about trading your car in. You're gonna sell us your car. We don't call it trading. You're gonna sell us your car. And And then you say, well, I would say, well, how much were you thinking about, how much did you want, this is the script, how much were you thinking about selling us your car for? And he says, well, I just got new brakes and this is a great car, and I'm not going to take a penny less than $5,000. Okay? Because that's what you've decided that your car is worth, at least $5,000. If not more, but for sure at least 5,000, okay? And so then I said, gosh, okay. Well, I mean, I don't know anything about used cars or what cars are worth. We have a guy in the apartment that gets that. That certainly sounds reasonable to me. And so then you go take the offer back to up to the tower, to the guy in charge of used cars, because he's also at the tower. And then you explain that you've got this customer who is got this car that he wants us to sell us, and he wants $5,000 for it. And so the manager writes you a note and says, this is what we're going to pay for this car. And you come back with a note that says $1,000. That's what we're going to give you, $1,000. And then you come back and say, here's what here's what he said. And you come back with the $4,000 offer, or the $1,000 offer. He wanted $5,000, or maybe he wanted even $12,000. Doesn't matter. Let's say he wanted $12,000 for his car. Doesn't matter. And you come back with like $2,000. Okay, that's probably a better example. And what you say before you leave is, before you go get the offer from your manager, you say to him, I don't know anything about used cars, but we took a car in like that last week, just like your car. We took something like that in, and it was like practically brand new. So maybe it wasn't as nice as yours, and they only gave him $2,000 for the car. And it's just like yours. And they only offered $2,000. And then the person then says, $2,000, I'm not taking a penny. Suppose he wanted 12. I'm not taking a penny less than 6. So he's already dropped the price a bunch because of that conversation you had with him before you ever went to see anybody in the tower. Yes and yes? You haven't seen a single person in the tower, but you've already got the price of that car drop, because the person then goes, I'm not going to take a penny less than this, usually. And it's usually kind of a big drop.
It's a huge drop. 50% less.
Yeah, that's it. Usually. I mean, you can usually get like a 50% drop. I know you guys are all shocked. It's just, Ginger, I can't believe this. Surely this isn't true. It is, right? So then, you're going, there's a then? So then, yeah, there's kind of a then, right? So then, let's see, so things have had a chance to dry, so I'm going to darken this right there. Oh, fine, I think I'll work on the gas pump for a little bit and let everything dry. Thank you, John. Okay, so we've dried all this, so I'm going to take, when you're repainting something that when you're like doing a major remodel on your painting, the thing you've got to do is kind of get rid of what you just did. Okay? We got to dry that, and then I'm going to work on the gas station. So then the manager comes back, and even less money.
You can't keep talking when you're drying.
And it's not based on reality or what the Blue Book says. The less money he can give you for your car, the more money he can make in the used car department, right? So this isn't based even on reality. I know your guys are so shocked, right? This is just the comment was always, you can always get more. That was how it worked. The comment was you can always get more no matter what the offer was, even if they wouldn't be unhappy with it. You could always get more. That's the comment. So, no matter what the offer was, and so you could go back in and you just basically, and your job as salesperson was to come back and convince this guy or lady that they weren't going to get, not only were they not going to get all that money for their car. Let's see, maybe I can use a black one. Do with the black one from the. I'm looking. Well, do this one. No, I don't want to use it. The Posca pens aren't good for this. Let's just.
You just had it.
Didn't I just have a little black one?
You had one in this setup.
Oh, here it is. Ah, I have it. Here it is. Yeah, okay. So, basically, they're making it up as they go. I mean, they obviously know what the car is worth. They're not going to give you Blue Book for it. That's the bottom line. And if you risk selling it yourself, which a lot of people do, they try to sell, you know, they might sell the car themselves, okay? I mean, they might try to sell the car themselves. You risk, you know, people cheating you, not giving you enough money for it. Any number of bad things can happen when you sell the car yourself. So most people don't want to fool with it because it is a risky proposition. It's a lot of money for a car, $4,000 or $5,000, a lot of money, and you don't want to be left holding the bag if the person's check bounces or you get held up in your house, or, you know, bad things can happen, yeah? So they've got it, they pretty much know that you're going to sell it to them, you know? So then the negotiation is between you and them, and it's who can hold out longer. And the salesperson, no matter, even if it's a reasonable offer, you know, what they're willing to pay, you will get sent back to that person and told to get more money. The quote is, there's always more money, go get it. Okay? I know it sounds ruthless, doesn't it, John?
It really sounds like you don't want to go to a car dealership.
I know. Well, I'll tell you how to go. You just have to know what the deal is and then beat them at their own game, right? So, but this is why people hate to go, right? People hate to go to a car dealership for that very reason.
Absolutely.
They absolutely hate it. They don't want to go to a car dealership and have to put up with all that monkey business, right? They have no interest in doing that. And you can understand why, and people dread. So anyway, that's basically the story of how they get you to pay more for the car, you know, because they absolutely can, because they've got you kind of, and how they see it is they literally have you over a barrel as far as your ability to resist them, okay? So, that being said, okay, I'm trying to redoing this little filling station thing, but needed to happen. So, oh, well, I like all the colors I've got on it now, don't you? That worked out. Okay, so I'll finish that in a minute. We're just still talking about cars, right? And okay. So yeah, back to, where were we? Oh yeah, back to the, meanwhile back at the ranch kind of thing, right? So, the trick is that when you go into a car dealership, don't go by yourself. Take somebody else and just beat them at their own game. Because we had people that could do it. They just collapsed, right? And if they, you know, it's just that this person is your, this person is, their job is to say, no, this is terrible, let's go somewhere else. That's their job, that's their line, that's what they're supposed to say. This is awful, I don't know if you should get this, probably isn't the right car for you, let's go somewhere else. Okay? That's their job.
It's a very important job too.
Yeah, that's their job. Regardless of what kind of deal you're getting, I don't know, it's their job. I mean, you can do it yourself, but sometimes, here's the thing, how you sell anybody anything, okay, is emotion. They get so emotionally invested in whatever it is that they want to buy, okay, make this a little thinner, is that they will, this I need thinner. Get my glasses on so I can see. I need about that much thinner, just a little bit thinner. I know I'm picky, but you just, you know, you just don't. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm focusing on this and kind of spacing out on the story, but that happens, right? So if you're emotionally involved, if they can get you emotionally involved in the purchase, they've got you. So what happens during a sales conversation is you've got a couple of jobs as a salesperson. And one is to overcome objections, right? Because, for instance, if a woman is shopping for a car by herself, when she gets home, some male in her family is going to say, what the heck did you buy? Are you nuts? And I'm sure I should have taken with it. I could have gotten you a better deal. I'm sure they cheated you, blah, 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 blah. So,
typical male.
So before you can go very far with this, you've got to give them some things they can say when they come home. So you've got to arm them with things to say, yeah? I know that sounds crazy, but you do, okay? And so, like, for instance, like one of the things when I was selling cars, and the reason people bought from me, was that one of the things I would do was we'd take it. You have to take a test drive. You couldn't. No one was allowed, even if they didn't want to take a test drive, they had to go. That was the rule. They had to go take a test drive. No way around that, right?
What was the reason for that?
Because, again, to get you emotionally involved with the car. If you didn't take a test drive, you weren't involved. You had to take a test drive to get the idea of how wonderful it would be to have this car. And you couldn't have that, you couldn't have that experience if you hadn't taken a test drive, yeah? Make sense?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. So that, I mean, they absolutely had to have you take a test drive in the car. So, the salesman doesn't, you're not allowed to drive it off the lot. The salesman does that. And then he gives you, in those days, you weren't allowed to drive it off the lot. I had to drive it off the lot. And then I had to park it somewhere where we could change drivers. But I was driving off the lot, I was telling you about the car and how nice it was and all the reasons why you should have it. But then, there's always a but then. And so where I would park it is I would go to a place, I lived in San Diego, so there was this ocean view and like a little kind of an overlook to the ocean for tourists. And I would park the car there and we would stand back and look at it like it was a brochure, because this is the artist in me. Look at this, isn't this just gorgeous next to the ocean? No one else did that. We went to the ocean, right?
So you're selling them the ocean view.
Selling the ocean view. They're buying a car, but they're getting an ocean view. This is just, and it looks like something out of the commercial, right? For the car, yes? And I know you're all just going, oh my God, Ginger, you're terrible. Well, yeah, maybe so, but that's what I did. And then, again, there's more, yeah? There's an and then, yeah? So, and then, you say things like, God, can you imagine what the neighbors are going to say when you drive up in this? I don't know if they have neighbors or if the neighbors would say anything, but I imagine nosy neighbors totally envious of this marvelous purchase. They'll just shoot a brick, right? Yep.
Absolutely.
If you drive up in this car, it's really something, isn't it? And then I said, and you know, one of the features of this car is that if you ever go to Mexico, this particular, what Ford does, you may not know this, but it also has kilometers, not just miles per hour. So even if you were to go down to Tijuana and drive and have to follow their speed limit, you'd know what it was. Now, I never told them that all cars came with that. All of them had it, right? But that was a feature, right? Okay, that was a feature. Yes and yes? Okay, absolutely, it was a feature. And again, like I say, all cars came with that, but that was the feature for that car that I felt I needed to tell them. Yes and yes. And a few others. And so we talked about the neighbors, you know, and you know, other things that were relevant. And sometimes we talked about what it was like to be a woman in the car business. Sometimes that elicited a little sympathy.
You
Not
really
always.
milked the crowd, didn't you?
Uh-huh. And then, of course, you know, I'd show them the letters that everybody loved me when they came back. You know, they got these letters. And, which they did, because, you know, they wrote letters. Nobody else had any letters, okay? They could have had letters, probably. And then the other thing was that I understood that when you're selling a car, if a man and woman come on the lot, the woman is the one that decides, unless it's a pickup truck, men don't get to pick out cars. They can come along, but the women decide what the car you're going to have is, unless it's a truck. Men, if a woman comes in alone and she's single, she can buy a car. But if the man comes in alone, he's buying a car for the family. If he isn't buying a pickup truck, he's not worth your time of day, because if his wife isn't with him, he isn't buying anything. Okay? I know, so harsh, isn't it?
Reality.
That's where it was. And so I never talked to the husband. I always talked to the wife. Right? And the difference between me and the guys, who kind of understood this, you know, kind of didn't say they didn't understand that, was that I didn't flirt with the wife. You know what I mean? Those dunkleheads didn't understand that you didn't do that. There's no flirting with anybody. They're here to buy a car. We're not doing flirting. There's no flirting. Yes? So, Anyway, so that was one thing. So, and then I would go in, if it was women alone, I would go in and I would show them things. Like, women really don't know. I said, you know what's unique about this car? And it wasn't particularly unique about that car. It was a thing, what, you know, as my son-in-law would John would call a feature, right? In the sense that it was a feature, yes? But it was, I think we'll end this one here, this post. I'm going to end all posts here, okay? There we go. So I would show them that anything that you had to do had yellow caps, had a little bit of yellow caps on it, right? Anything that required, like the oil, I'd show how to take the oil thing out and to decide whether you needed oil, and show some basic stuff that, you know, a lot of...
The oil thing.
Yeah, that a lot of women didn't know. And if it was yellow, you had to worry about it. And besides, you had a warranty, and that's why you, they had a service department, and you bought a big contract, so you never had to think about it again, right? Okay? Yes. Yes and yes? So, happily, we did... we had some pretty good car sales from the women, because they understood that. They believed me when I said those things, right? Anyway, so I quite liked working at the Ford store. But, you know, after the spiff fiasco, which will ever be known as the spiff fiasco, I didn't have the warm, fuzzy thing. They weren't as bad as Mitsubishi, but you know what? They were making me mad. And I tried the store down there in San Diego, where I tried that store where they suggested you cut off the customer's head and shit down the hole. Those people, right? I tried them, and I lasted there about no more than I think not even a month, just a paycheck or something. And I couldn't work for those people. They were just too, and besides, when I parked my car there, somebody actually stole a Mercedes emblem off my used Mercedes that I bought.
That wasn't very nice of them.
No. George was continuing to work at Center City Ford, but let me just take that off. I don't like it.
But you moved on?
I'm the adventuresome one, you know. I was the adventuresome one. Okay, so anyhow, let's get my pen out here for this kind of stuff. Okay. So I went to work for Honda. There was a Honda dealership not far from the Ford dealership, and I decided I wanted to go work for them. And they had women salesmen there, and so I wasn't an anomaly, okay? And they were a little more, I guess what I would say was they just seemed a little more civilized.
It's a nice way to put it.
You know, I mean, not completely. They had their things, but they didn't seem quite as not quite. They seemed more gender friendly. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But I guess the other reason that they had when I was working at the Ford store, they did have a fleet department. And, but it was a pretty serious one, and so there was no way I was going to get into fleet. You know what I mean? They weren't going to give me the fleet department. But occasionally I worked with fleet department and different people. But I personally was not going to get a fleet, department like I had at Mitsubishi. But I didn't need one. I didn't need the fleet department to make money. But every week we had a sales meeting. Sometimes we had to go downstairs. The owners of our dealership was from Mexico. He was a very rich, handsome guy from Mexico, and we occasionally saw him at sales meetings. But once a week, because he owned several dealerships, not just ours. Once a month, we had to go down to San Diego and see him. But otherwise, we were we had the meetings there. I think I showed you the meeting room in the little diagram. And so imagine there's 27 guys, and plus the managers and me. And once one of the, and again, salespeople came and went. But there was one guy that worked there, and he was ex-military guy, Marine, retired from the Marine Corps, and they called him Sarge. And he was a short little guy, and a little obnoxious, if I may say so. I didn't particularly like him. I didn't have anything about it. I rarely talked to him. He wasn't even on my radar, so to speak, right? So anyway, he was at the sales meeting. Apparently he'd sold like 7 trucks to somebody. 7 trucks. He'd made a big sale. And management was extremely happy with him. And they had asked him what he would like as a reward, besides the bonuses, if he could have anything, what he wanted as a reward for selling all those trucks. And I promise you, it took me some years before I could even speak of this because it was so horrifying. He said, and it's just me and all those guys in this room, right? Because the girl with the flirty girl didn't go into any of those. That one that was flirting with everybody with the weird things sticking out of her chest with the tubes for the herpes. She wasn't there, right? Now you keep in mind, I wasn't particularly friendly with people. I wasn't flirting with anybody. George worked there. We were very careful never to. We're just careful. We didn't do any of that stuff, right?
How old were you at this time?
33 maybe.
Okay.
Very pretty, pretty hot at 33. So, but I say that, what's true, I got pictures, I remember. So, anyway, so he says he would like Ginger to stand up on the table right where we were and pee.
Pardon me?
Pee. And
so the meeting was held in the restroom?
No, it was held on the table. I was supposed to pee on the table for the amusement of all the males in the room.
I see.
I see, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everybody, the management, nobody said shit. The management let him get away with saying that. No, and everybody looked at me to see what I was going to do about it. And I just sat there and I did nothing. I really was thinking about what I was going to do about it. And I hadn't come to a conclusion. But if you think Ginger has moments when she's hopping mad, there's no words to describe how mad that made me, right? So and remember, I described me. He was a short little guy. Okay. He was short, maybe about 5'4", and I'm like 5'11". And I came up to him as we were leaving the sales meeting, and he wasn't prepared for this. I shoved him against the wall as hard as I could, and he went banging into the wall because he's a little guy, right? I shoved him into the wall, and I said, listen, you son of a bitch, I make a lot more money than you. And if you ever say anything like that again, I will have you beat up in your own parking lot. I will just hire it out. Swear to God, that's what I said.
Well,
and then sometime later, he looked very soberly at me. He never, sometime later, he and I were doing a deal together on some cars. And somebody says, I can't believe you're working with Sarge. I said, he and I have an understanding. We're fine. But I got a lot of respect from that group for that. Because that applied to everybody in there, just so you know.
Oh, absolutely.
That just didn't apply to that creep Sarge, who thought he could just say shit like that in a meeting. Because you imagine today, today I would own the dealership with that comment if nobody done. I'd own the dealership. But back then, again, women were an anomaly. Another reason why I left the dealership, the management did not stand up for me, which they should have, said, you're out of line, leave, or whatever, right? But it was just, I don't know, everybody was in kind of shock. And then when the rumor went flying around what I'd said to him, and the rumor what I'd said to him, well,
leave Ginger alone.
Yeah. You really want to mess with Ginger? Because I don't think so. But, now, believe it or not, I didn't originate that saying. And I didn't see it on TV. A very good friend of mine was getting a divorce. And she was married to a doctor. And they were arguing over the money or something. She actually never divorced him, but they were arguing. This was one of the times. They went through these divorce things all the time, those two. And that was what she said to him one time when they were arguing over alimony. It was that she just said that, she had saved money and she would have him beat up in his own parking lot if he didn't start being more forthcoming with the money. And I always thought she was a very wild person. But I remembered that saying because, who threatens anybody with beating them up in their own parking lot, right? It's just, who does that, right? So, anyhow, that was the gist of, come on, you guys, that was weird, right?
Weird?
Well, yeah, it was, okay. I will do more to the gas station in a little bit. I will play with the front of this. Is everybody still? It's like 5:30. I can't believe it.
No, I can't either.
Because, everybody's engrossed in these stories about selling cars in San Diego, right?
Well, I wonder how many people are still with us.
I know. It's just how do these things happen, right? So, but mostly,
this was at the Honda dealer?
This was the Ford dealership. That's why I moved. So at the Honda dealership, we had meetings, and nobody suggested we shit down the throats of our customers, which was a relief to me. Because people don't stay in the car business very long. They can't. You know what I mean? They don't last very long. They sell cars for a while. It's very rare that they stay very long. F&I people can stay. That's the financing people can stay, but it's very, some of the managers that can stay because you've got to be willing to go along with some of this stuff, right? In the old days, before I started selling cars, one of the things they would do was, and people were afraid to go to car dealerships, that you'd go to trade your car in, they'd throw your car keys up on the roof and not let you leave till you agreed to buy a car. This is, I kid you not, this is, these are kind of some things that could happen to people, okay?
That was common practice?
Yeah, I mean, lie, cheat, and steal. I mean, there's a reason why people didn't like car dealerships, you know, and then we're afraid of, because usually shopping is fun. And so one of the nice things, before I go into the Honda shop, one of the nice things that happened to me was that one of the reasons I was so successful at selling cars, because I understood, because it's terrifying to go to a car dealership, because you don't know what kind of crap they're going to pull on you right back then. So if people showed up, they were very rarely window shopping. If they were going to buy a car, they may not buy a car from you, but they were going to buy a car from somebody, okay? It may not be you, but they were sure going to buy a car from somebody.
That's true.
So my job was to make sure it was me. Yeah? So I remember a young man coming to the dealership, and he just couldn't qualify to buy the car. I mean, he wanted the car. I mean, who doesn't want a new car? I mean, look, people go to, you know, I like to watch Price is Right and watch people all win cars. It's fun. Something about, you know, they always say that the most expensive purchases in your life or expenses are your house, your divorce, and your car. Okay?
Your house, your divorce, and your car?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
In that order?
Yeah. I don't know what order, but yeah. Yes and yes?
I'm not familiar with all those.
Well, I know, John, you know. But, you know, that's
the way it is. So.
That's the way it is.
Okay.
Okay? So, I hope somebody, you know, one of our, the purple member that's going to get, somebody in our, that's signed up as a 3-year purple member.
Better enjoy this.
We'll get this car. We'll get this, this car and the painting that goes with it, right? So where was I with the purchases? Oh yeah, purchasing a car. Isn't it funny? I have these pens here. I know I have them. I put them somewhere and then I don't have them.
You told me to bring you a jar so you can keep them all together.
I know.
Do I need to supervise you putting them back in the jar?
Maybe, because I had a white one a little while ago. I swear I just had the white one. Well, we'll move on until I see where the white one is. Okay. So, but anyway, the house is looking kind of cute. Yes and yes.
Did you get your white one?
Don't you see it? I had a white one here. It's not in the jar. I knew you guys are laughing, but I just...
Tape's all over the floor. That's where I'd put it.
Tapes are all over the floor. There's the black one, white one. There was one.
Did you have this one? Is this the one you were thinking of?
Maybe that's the one. Where did you find that?
In the blue tray.
Oh, it's in the blue tray. Well, that'll work.
Put it in your jar now.
So this is kind of going on. How long have I been at this, John?
3 hours, 9 minutes, and 8 seconds. 10 seconds.
Well,
11 seconds. 12 seconds. Do you want to keep counting?
Gee, I feel kind of bad about, this, because I'm not done. This looks like this is going to be a 3-step painting, or maybe I could just take a break for a little bit and come back and finish this later. I think I have to stand up after 3 hours. I won't be able to walk otherwise. You guys, my knees will go. They just will. So I'm going to have to, we'll talk more about the Honda dealership. And
so this is an exciting episode. You have to wait until next exciting same
to see
back
me
channel.
finish the rest of this painting and finish all these things. Because you can see all this takes a little time. I've got to put in more mullions in the windows and a little fire extinguisher here, and I got stuff. We got a sign up here. We got stuff to do. Painting like this takes a little bit of time, doesn't it? So I might come up after dinner and work on this, John. I don't know if anybody will be watching or not.
Well,
or maybe tomorrow.
They can watch the replay.
Huh?
They can watch the replay if they want to know the exciting story with the Honda dealership.
Well, they can, because, like for instance, when we start doing, this street is going to be all reflections, a wet street to this window. It's going to have all colors down in here. It's going to be really pretty. And like that, see? It's going to be way cool. You got to trust me on this, right? And so George stayed at Center City Ford, and I went to work at the Honda dealership, and that came with its own perks and nonsense. Yeah. All right. I would sit here for another 3 hours and paint on this, but I know my body has to get up and rest. And I want to shout out everybody. Do you have the picture of the dog, the painting of the dog? If you didn't catch our video, this is not a tutorial, but we did give you a tutorial on how to paint this dog on Christmas Day in the afternoon, and that was yesterday. So if you didn't get a chance to see this beagle puppy being painted, the title is, how to paint a dog like an expert. And the traceable for this is available on our website, Acrylic Painting with gingercook.com. I would suggest you go over there, and even if you're not an Orange member, we're doing the traceable at Christmas for free for everybody. So
you just have to sign up as a green member.
You have to sign up as a free member, and then you'll have access to the traceable for this, okay?
That's how our system works.
That's how our system works. And
that's Roscoe.
This is Roscoe. So if you want to learn how to paint Roscoe, do that. Or you appreciate the comments that you make about the videos and the stories. We should share other things. And just remember the things that you learned today from selling cars. The tips I gave you today was don't go to the dealership alone. Try to go the last day of the month or the last 2 days, because they have a quota of so many cars, and the more cars they sell, the happier they are, and the more cars they can get from the company the next time. If you see an ad in the paper, write down the VIN number and check to see if the VIN number, if they've sold it, if they say they've sold it, demand to see the receipt, because they have to show it to you. They do? Oh yes, they do. They have to show it to you, okay? So demand that, and remember that if they can get you emotionally wrapped up in that car,
you're going to do it.
You're done.
That's all she wrote.
That's all she wrote. Okay? If they can emotionally hook you, you're gone. So that, and their job is to get you so emotionally involved and talk about, on the car that because once they've got you on that, and look, their job, they want you to have the car. They're not bad people, okay? They're lovely people. They want, well, maybe that's too big exaggeration. Most of them are lovely. Some are lovely. There's a few lovely ones, but
how quickly they digress down.
But the thing of it is that, it's just like when you buy an airline ticket or a cruise ship. John and I do a lot of cruising for free, okay? And we're able to do that because we understand how to look for deals. And there's deals everywhere, and you want to know how to look for the deal on anything you buy, right? I told you, I think the other day, that I could get a deal on garage doors for $5 by just becoming a dealer for garage doors by just saying I'm going and registering to be a dealer. Okay? It's not a big secret, right? And so these are all fun things that you can do, and these are just tips on how to sell the money. And I will continue on with my life as a car salesman on the
And
next
later
episode.
episode.
Later episodes, you guys. Thanks for watching. Love you guys. Happy holidays, whatever holiday you're celebrating. And I hope you're enjoying story time. Tell all your friends about it.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.